One of the things I love the most about doing this project is the opportunity to visit places of special ecological significance in New Mexico. We'll take you to the Gila Preserve, where rivers of New Mexico are being restored and preserved by the Nature Conservancy.
We're here on the Gila Riparian Preserve, and we're at the most upper end of the preserve, which spans a couple miles here at the upper end of the Cliff Gila Valley. So we're looking at where the river comes out of the canyon-bound reach in the Gila National Forest and the Gila Wilderness. And it comes out of the wilderness and spills out into the valley. And so this field below us is the first place where the river kind of spills out and then travels down the valley and spreads across the floodplain.
This is spectacularly beautiful.
It is. This is one of my favorite spots where you can actually kind of look down on the river.
And the contrast between the starkness and then the lushness down there.
Yeah, I think that's the amazing thing about desert rivers is that you have this lush bottomland compared to rocky, dry cactus land above. So the headwaters of the Gila it's all in the Gila National Forest basically. And this is the first wilderness area in the United States, which Aldo Leopold advocated for protecting the entire watershed actually. So the Gila River, I think this is kind of cool, but the EPA recently did a survey across the country of water quality, and they surveyed the Gila, included the Gila as kind of a reference site because our headwaters are protected, and so it's incredibly clean water coming out of the wilderness. Because the Gila still has these flood pulses and periods of drought and floods of all sizes, that's what creates the amazing diversity that we're interested in protecting and maintaining. So diversity of birds and fish and mammals and that kind of thing.
It looked like the floodplains are just huge when we were driving in here.
And most people, so a lot of people don't visit the Gila because it's so remote. We're several hours from major population centers, and that's obviously helped protect it over time. But when people come and see the Gila, people who work on rivers, they're astounded at how wide the floodplain is. And I hadn't worked on rivers before I worked here. and I just remember the first time I walked all the way across the floodplain from the Conservancy's Gila River Farm. And I couldn't believe it was New Mexico. It felt like I was in a jungle. And it kept going on and on. So I think the breadth of the floodplain is really marvelous. And it's the floods that have created that and sustained vegetation on the floodplain.
Yeah, it looks very, very lush, especially for such an arid climate. Yeah. So do you do much mentoring with the local community?
We work on a limited basis with the local university, Western New Mexico University, and then of course, as I was mentioning, the research partners. We have students coming from universities who come and work on the Gila, and that's another way of mentoring as well, because they're interested in conservation and what we're doing and why and that kind of thing.
And then you have a lot of people that come through the center where you live that are doing studies too, don't you?
Right.
Sounds like a fairly constant stream.
Well, and they always bring, we always learn something from them. And that I knew nothing about fish before I worked here on the Gila, and I've learned a lot just from talking with folks at the end of the day about what they're seeing on their surveys, what they're noticing over time. And so it's a great opportunity to have the research center bring people in and then share their knowledge with me as well. So what I find really amazing about working and living on the Gila is that this system is a reference ecosystem for Southwest rivers. I mean, it's functioning the way it's meant to in terms of its flow regime. Floods still happen, and
so
people
it's
come
unique
here.
in that way.
It's very unique in that way.
Because the Rio Grande has been impounded a lot, and a lot of that water goes to Texas and other places.
Right, and if you go to these impounded rivers, you can just sense the difference. Big old trees, ancient trees, kind of nothing growing underneath. It's a very different system compared to the regeneration that happens here. And the natural regeneration, we're not planting trees. The floods do that for us. So there are a lot of places that have been degraded over time, and it's hard to reverse that trend in some cases. And here, the flow regime, the river itself, if we've removed the stresses like cattle or vehicles, if we manage the dewatering of the river through diversions, then the river creates habitat all on its own, and it's amazing to watch that. So I find it really hopeful.